I heard it in his voice before I understood the words. Flat, careful, like he'd practiced saying it without shaking. "You left to win," he said. We were sitting at the small kitchen table, the one with the uneven leg I never fixed. Evening light was fading, and I remember thinking I should turn on the lamp. I didn't. I needed to see his face clearly. My hands were wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. I hadn't taken a sip in minutes. When I answered, my voice surprised me. It didn't crack. It didn't rise. "I stayed to survive," I said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded. Years of choices sat between us. Unpaid attention, long hours, closed doors, things never explained because there was never time. He didn't argue. That was the part that scared me most. He just nodded, once, like someone acknowledging a truth they'd already accepted. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't a fight. It was an accounting. Something was being measured, and whatever the result was, it couldn't be undone. Before that night, my life had been shaped by one rule: don't let everything fall apart. I learned it early, and I lived by it without questioning the cost. I raised my son alone, not in a dramatic way, just quietly, consistently. His father faded out over time, and when the absence became permanent, I didn't have the luxury of grief. I had work, rent, mornings that didn't care how tired I was. So I became efficient, reliable, hard to read. Our days ran on structure. I packed lunches, checked homework, paid bills late at night when the house was asleep. I rarely missed what was necessary, but I often missed what was personal. Conversations ended quickly. Emotions were postponed. I told myself there would be room for that later. My son grew up watching me handle pressure without complaint. I thought I was teaching him resilience. I didn't see that I was also teaching distance. Love, in our house, looked like endurance, and for a long time, I believed that was enough. The decision that changed everything didn't feel dramatic at the time. It felt responsible. I remember sitting at my desk, phone pressed to my ear, listening to someone explain the offer slowly, like I might not understand. Better position, more money, more security. The kind of opportunity you don't say no to when you're afraid of losing ground. It required more of me, longer hours, travel, being less available in ways that didn't show up on a calendar but mattered anyway. I thought about my son sitting alone after school, about the way he already knew how to make his own dinner. I told myself this was temporary, strategic, that I was choosing stability for both of us. When I told him, he didn't argue. He shrugged, said, "Okay," and went back to his room. I took that as consent, as understanding. I didn't ask more. I didn't slow down to listen for what wasn't being said. What I didn't realize was that to him, this wasn't just about work. It was confirmation. Proof that survival always came first, and that love, no matter how real, would always wait its turn. After that, our life sped up and thinned out at the same time. Days blurred. Mornings were rushed, evenings short. We spoke in updates instead of conversations. I was home less, but when I was there, I was exhausted. I listened with half my attention, already thinking about the next obligation. He noticed. Children always do. He stopped repeating himself. Then he stopped trying. I missed milestones without realizing they were milestones. The first time he failed a class, the night he didn't come home until very late, and brushed past my questions with practiced calm. I told myself this was normal. Teenagers pull away. Independence looks like distance before it looks like strength. But there were signs I chose not to read. His door stayed closed. His laughter came from behind a screen, not from the living room. We learned how to coexist without relying on each other, and that skill settled in quietly. At night, when the house finally slowed down, I felt the weight of what I was trading. But by morning, urgency returned. Survival doesn't negotiate. It demands compliance. And I kept paying, convinced the bill would never come due. After that, our life sped up and thinned out at the same time. Days blurred, mornings were rushed, evenings short. We spoke in updates instead of conversations. I was home less, but when I was there, I was exhausted. I listened with half my attention, already thinking about the next obligation. He noticed. Children always do. He stopped repeating himself. Then he stopped trying. I missed milestones without realizing they were milestones. The first time he failed a class, the night he didn't come home until very late and brushed past my questions with practiced calm. I told myself this was normal. Teenagers pull away. Independence looks like distance before it looks like strength. But there were signs I chose not to read. His door stayed closed. His laughter came from behind a screen, not from the living room. We learned how to coexist without relying on each other, and that skill settled in quietly. At night, when the house finally slowed down, I felt the weight of what I was trading. But by morning, urgency returned. Survival doesn't negotiate. It demands compliance. And I kept paying, convinced the bill would never come due. The confrontation didn't come in an argument. It came in preparation. I noticed his room was too neat. Not cleaned, emptied. The desk drawer half open. The closet lighter. He was packing with intention, not emotion. When I asked what he was doing, he didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. He told me he was leaving after graduation. Not running away, just moving on. He had plans, a job lined up, a place to stay. He spoke like someone who'd already learned not to depend on permission. That's when I tried to reach back. I talked about fear, about how close we'd always been to losing everything, about how every extra hour I worked felt like insurance against disaster. I said the word survive out loud, like it could still explain things. He listened quietly. Then he said it again, slower this time. You left to win. I took a step toward him. He didn't step back, but he didn't step forward either. And in that stillness, I understood the decision wasn't happening now. It had happened years ago, in pieces, every time I chose urgency over presence. He moved out in late summer. No fight, no dramatic goodbye, just boxes, a borrowed truck, and the sound of tape-sealing cardboard. We stood in the driveway for a moment after everything was loaded. He hugged me, brief, careful. The kind of hug you give someone you respect, not someone you rely on. I told him to call when he arrived. He said he would, and he did. Now our relationship exists in messages, in scheduled visits, in conversations that are honest but limited. We speak like two adults who share a history instead of a present. He understands more now. I carry more regret. Both feel permanent. When I think back to that night at the kitchen table, I know neither of us was wrong. He left to win his independence. I stayed to survive the years that demanded it. But survival leaves marks. It teaches people how to live without you. This is a personal story, a real-life experience shaped by choice, responsibility, and consequence. I didn't lose my son, but I lost the closeness I thought endurance alone could protect.